A good Wednesday evening to you. NASA People's Assembly motion passed the Mombasa County Assembly today, becoming the 11th devolved house to do so. And then, late this evening, Machakos became the 12th. But the County Assembly of Nairobi refused to allocate time for debate on it. The House Business Committee here in our nation's capital blamed that on an injunction issued by the High Court in Kitui on 20th November. So what is the central argument in that motion? A People's Assembly will be formed to discuss and determine affairs of the country and recommend a path to achieve the promise, aspirations, objectives, and rights and freedoms provided by the Constitution, it says in part. So that is particularly critical for NASA, which maintained today that it would swear in its leader Raila Odinga on 12th December. A statement from advisor Salim Loan said, Mr. Odinga's swearing in will be lawful. It will help prevent further polarization by giving Kenyans hope for electoral justice that was denied them under a genuinely independent IEBC. He says Odinga remains open to dialogue, similar to talks between him and a sworn-in President Kibaki back in 2008, as long as electoral justice is on the agenda. We have lots to discuss. Let's get this thing on the road.
We know they've been sending people to our house, right outside the gate, the compounds are next to ours. They have reported to us that there are people who come to our gate and just stay there.
He puts across his ideas. There are those who aren't happy with them, and there are those who take them seriously.
The remedy, the people cannot be ruled against their will. The people can resist, and the people will resist.
Thank you.
He has fought a good fight because up to yesterday he was talking.
We were meant to have been disbanded month 1 of our operation.
If you find yourself requiring several advisors to do the job for which either you were elected or appointed, it is time to leave the job and go and do something.
My name is Madowo. This is Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm excited to bring out my panel today. Cate Warugu is the MP for the great people of Laikipia County. Asante sana for coming on tonight. And Dr.Lilian Gogo is joining us, MP for the great people of Rangwe. And the advocates, Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana and Charles Kanjama, friend of NTV, are back with us.
Pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is all mine. Unfortunately, this evening I was told that we could not have the Honorable Alice Wahome on our air. I apologize that we promoted her and she will not be on tonight, and I apologize to Alice Wahome for that. First, though, our condolences to the people of Kitui West who lost their MP Francis Nyanze today. The former minority leader died at the Nairobi hospital this morning of pneumonia. He was 60 years old. He battled cancer of the colon for the last 10 years and developed pneumonia during the campaign period, according to the family. During the MP's swearing in on 31st August, Nyanze carried an oxygen tank into the National Assembly. He was also a former Environment, Heritage and Sports Minister in the KANU era. He was born on June 2nd, 1957 at Kabati in Kitui County and is survived by his wife Edith, with whom they have a son and 2 daughters. May his soul rest in peace. I'm sure for you who were colleagues in the House, you must have some messages for the family, for his constituents. Oh yes, I want to take this opportunity to thank you. And I thank the Nation Media Fraternity for giving me this opportunity and hosting me for, I'm not very sure about that this is your last or final show. This is the final live show this year. Yes. The Sidebar show. And it's been my honor, I've been honored to be here. The last time I was here, we were tackling Laikipia problems with livestock killing. And I want to confirm that Laikipia, we are back to 8 and not fighting this time, but coexisting each other. And we are very patient with each other and no more killings. Number 2, I want to pass my message of condolences to the family of one Honorable Nyanze. And I must say, for myself and the people of Laikipia who I represent, we want to say pole to his constituency and his family. And number 2, also as a legislator, I want to speak my mind to Kenyans to tell them that I'm very keen and I'm lobbying with my party and lobbying with leadership and also parliamentarians that we declare cancer as a national disaster, and so that the government and ourselves, we give it the seriousness it deserves. I'm sorry again, and I want to pray that no more Kenyans will have to die because of cancer. Thank you, Dr. Gogo.
Thank you so much, Larry, for hosting me, and I also want to thank Nation Media Group for giving me this opportunity. Actually, this was discussed in Parliament this afternoon, the death of the Honorable Member for Kitui West. And it is unfortunate that this is the second high-profile politician we are losing in the shortest period of time. We lost the governor for Nyeri the other day, and now we are losing a sitting member of parliament. It's not very interesting because of the intricacies that we go through, especially in the electioneering period. I want to take this time on my own behalf and on behalf of the people of Rangwe constituency to mourn with the people of Kitui West constituency. And I want to encourage the family to keep strong. God is on their side, it shall be well. Cancer is a very big problem in this country, and I should think that we should really take it seriously as a nation. And I also want to cover the rest of the politicians that are left behind, because we don't want to lose politicians. We want to, and the rest of the Kenyan community, we want to keep safe, we want to keep there, and we want to keep ourselves tucked in well together as a nation, so that justice be our shield and defender.
All right, thank you very much. Gentlemen, do you have any moments, real quick?
Well, poleni sana for people and citizens of Kitui in general, and the Kamba Nation, the party from which it belongs, and the entire country. Death is not an easy thing, and condolences to everyone involved.
Right. I also want to reiterate what has been said by my colleagues on air. I think it's a sad moment. Every death of a Kenyan is a sad moment. For Francis Nyenze, who was a former minority chief whip, many people depended on him and relied on his wisdom and his activity. Of course, for his family, it doesn't matter whether he was a leader or not. It's a personal hurt. So we wish them condolences, and we hope indeed that we can address those challenges like cancer and so on that are taking away the lives of our leaders.
All right. Let's get this out of the way real quick, because it is strange for me, because I found myself in the news yesterday when I was, I'm told it's not a summon, it's a request from the DCI to go and assist in investigations, because they said this office is investigating the case of incitement to violence contrary to section 96A, B, C of the Penal Code, and subversive activities contrary to section 77 of the Penal Code. It stems out of an interview with David Day back in August, I think 22nd of August, where he talked about secession and why some parts of Kenya, he called it a cruel marriage. It's time for them to secede. And this is, I usually report the news. It's not every that I become the news. Dr. Alutalala is laughing, but this is very serious. Why is this so amusing to you, sir?
Well, you're putting it in a comical way, but proceed. Proceed.
What are my legal options? Because this is a free legal advice. You're sitting on my set, I'm giving you mandazis, so I guess I can get pro bono advice.
Yeah, my learned friend Kanjama.
Pro bono is a word, right?
Yeah, my learned friend Kanjama had already extended pro bono services off camera, and he had read to you the definition of subversive activities under the Penal Code 77.
77.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is very broad, the way it can be interpreted to mean many different things.
Yeah. I think, Larry, the Penal Code was enacted under an old constitution, in fact, under an old colonial mindset, because it predates the independence constitution. And there are some provisions which don't seem to go very well with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. Critically, Article 34 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is on freedom of the media. And if it can be demonstrated, as indeed it seems, that the interview is required of you by the police services because of what you are doing on air in public, then I think you can actually assert your rights of freedom of the press and Article 34 of the Constitution. Of course, you have the journalistic privilege, which all advanced democracies recognize as a very important pillar of our rights and freedom, so that indeed, if the police services want to investigate Dr. Ndi or Ndei, seems pronunciation has been wrong.
Yes, we've been saying it wrong. It's apparently Dr. Ndei.
Then I think they should just download the clip from the NTV website and get enough information from there without having to require a journalist who invites people, reports what people have told them, with that understanding that there's some confidentiality, there's some privilege to go against that journalistic characteristic that is very important to a free and democratic society. It doesn't mean that journalists don't have their code of ethics. It doesn't mean that journalists are free to air anything they want to air. But I think for those who watched your show, you are carrying out a public responsibility. There's a public conversation. You are articulating, you are eliciting views from the Kenyans who are involved in that conversation, which has actually been at center stage in our country for a few months.
Is that your legal reading as well?
Yes, I fully associate myself with the opinion of my learned colleague, and just to add that the police approach must move from what appears to be intimidation and be more responsive in line with the provisions of the Constitution. For instance, they need not summon you. All the information that you aired online, on radio, on TV is available. But summoning you and peppering it with saying that it's a friendly call that you go and assist in investigations is uncalled for. And the penal code, as learned counsel has said, really has outlived most of its usefulness. And it's just a question of time before a Kenyan moves to court to apply that some sections be struck off for being in contradiction with the provisions of the Constitution. Look at what Council has said there. I mean, there's freedom of speech. And if you were to speak in line with that freedom and be cited for subversion, that would clearly fly in the face of the Constitution. So without belaboring that point, I think that's where it should rest.
If this is an old colonial mindset, like you call it, and it is incompatible with the 2010 Constitution, why do these laws still exist? And why are they being used to do these things?
Larry, I'll not be so dismissive of the Constitution, of the Penal Code, that is. It has over 300 sections. Offenses like murder, manslaughter, robbery with violence, and so on are found in the very same Penal Code. Even the offense of rape, until very recently, it was moved to the Sexual Offences Act. So this is a principal penal or criminal statute in Kenya that is meant to secure law and order. But of course, there are a few provisions that require to be updated and maybe have not been updated. And maybe Section 77 on subversive activities is one of them. But we shouldn't throw the baby the bathwater. What we should do is we should amend those sections that need to be amended. And in any case, there was a recognition when we passed the Constitution of Kenya 2010 that it will take a long time to bring all the laws into consistency or harmony with the Constitution. There's a provision in the Constitution that says, while that process is being undertaken, the courts and everyone should interpret all existing laws in harmony with the Constitution, and the Constitution should prevail.
All right. I just wanted to bring that out of the way because we have a lot to discuss, but I wanted to dispense sort of with that because it's not every day that journalists are themselves the subject of news stories, and Nation has said that neither myself nor RAN TV will be recording a statement, so I guess that's that. If I get arrested, at least I've got 2 lawyers offering free legal advice. I will be expecting messages of solidarity from Dr. Gogo and Kid.
But if you received any summons, my thought will be, my thought will be, if the police have sent you someone, just appear. There's no harm. You know, this is a case of the reporter becoming the news and you reported. So in this case, without maybe wasting a lot of time, it's just that if you've been requested by the police to appear, just go appear, answer questions, and I would discourage you from defying, because what precedents would you be setting to Kenyans? You're only trying to tell them, look, it's not any other day that you're invited or any other day you receive summons that you have to appear.
But journalists cannot testify against the news sources.
In this case, I feel, to me, I take this as a, you know, as a rare case against Devin D and the allegations that the government has against him. And in this case, there is no other person who is likely to be used as witness or the person who holds first-hand information other than yourself. So in this case, if the company itself or you as a reporter, you have nothing, there's nothing wrong you did against the nation or misleading Kenyans, in this case you should walk boldly. Just go, defend yourself. And you have pro bono advisors and your lawyers are here. Just appear. I mean, encourage Kenyans to abide by the law and the Constitution that we passed.
Dr. Gogo, what do you think?
My thought will be, if this the police have sent you someone, just appear. There's no harm. You know, this is a case of the reporter becoming the news and you reported. So in this case, without maybe wasting a lot of time, it's just that if you've been requested by the police to appear, just go appear.
Dr. Gogo, what do you think?
About you appearing?
Yes.
Well, appear. It's not a bad thing. After all, we need to keep our gentlemen in uniform with some work. They need to work. So it's not a big deal. Just go there. We'll come and we'll be with you. We'll tag us along. We'll come.
All right. There's a lot of disagreement about that. Do you think I should appear?
Oh yes.
Well, really, it's really a question of choice.
Do you think I should appear?
When I have advised my clients, and you're not one of them.
Yes, I have not given you a retainer yet.
I normally tell them that when you receive police summons, you want to discourage the police from coming to physically arrest
Look
you.
for you.
You go there, and you don't have to answer any question.
Yeah.
I cannot really answer on the particular circumstances of this case, but I would say whether you appear or not, it will not prejudice your journalistic privilege, because you don't need to answer any question that you don't want to answer. The Article 49 of the Constitution is clear that every arrested person or every person under police investigation has a right to keep silent, has a right to go with counsel. It's really up to you. But I think,
encouraging to
I think if NTV wants to send a message that it is unacceptable to summon journalists on news reports on air, then they may have justification for publicly saying they will not appear. But I would imagine that behind the scenes, probably the management of NTV and the top people in the police will try to come to a settlement that secures both the interests of NTV and the interests of administration of justice.
All right.
And just to add on to that, Council, it's not always when police call people to the police stations that they mean bad. Yeah, I'm a witness to that. Not always. It's not always that when they want you there, they want you for something to do with handcuffing you.
Okay.
So just go.
All right, fair enough. In all fairness, the Nation legal team has said they're still studying the summons, and they will be.
But they were very fair on you.
Giving a
you know, for Devin D was another story. You only received invites. You had an invite to honor someone. Don't you think the government was fair?
Devin D is accused.
Please appear, encourage. If you want, we want us to change that penal code, and you want me and the member of parliament to do something about it, please go.
Devin D is accused of incitement to violence and subversive activities.
Correct.
Subversive activities.
Correct.
These are strong charges.
Yeah, they are.
Correct. That's why we tell you, please don't cover yourself under the blanket.
Okay.
Be there.
Fair enough. While we're talking about MPs, on Tuesday, the Nation was reporting today, you made an avenue to make more money from taxpayers, because now you can be appointed to at least 2 committees.
Jesus Christ.
Even after the Salaries and Remuneration Committee massively cut MPs'
It is always about the MPs wanting to make more money from taxpayers. You mean MPs don't pay taxes?
Before, you were not able to sit on 2 committees concurrently. But because each of these committees has a sitting allowance of what is, I think, 5,000 shillings, MPs have made this possible.
Can I make this clear, please?
Yes.
We do not earn any allowance from the plenary sittings. And committee sittings, I can only do a maximum of 4 sittings in a week. I attend how many sessions? 1 session on Tuesday, 2 on Wednesday, another one 4. Meaning that every single day for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I've got only an allowance of a single committee. So what are you talking about? I mean, I've not received any information, you know, from Parliament, let alone even the journalists who are covering Parliament, that MPs have decided they want to hike their salaries. I mean, please just spare us.
And which are these
this whole thing, is groundless. I mean, has no roots. And what I would term it as non-factual information.
And which committees are you talking about? Because none has been done, none has been made. You are talking about committees. Why are you preempting so that we have people, you know, go against the members of parliament, people whom they have elected?
This report,
which committees are these?
This report said the MP started the process of amending House rules.
As I can remember, the main thing was to have the national government CDF systems passed, money that is supposed to be taken for running the county government passed, but we needed committees to actually have these systems running. And that is what was discussed in Parliament. What are you talking about the 2 so that we can get money from
and what is wrong?
Taxpayers?
What is wrong with the members sitting in 2 committees? I mean, the word
that
concurrent.
That is overworking. We are going to work too much.
I think, Larry, with your permission, so that we are also useful in what the 200 members are discussing, maybe the beginning point is, were the standing orders amended with that sole purpose of facilitating them to sit in 2, unlike before.
They have started the process of amending the rules to increase the size of House committees to allow each of the 349 lawmakers to be appointed to at least 2 committees. And in this one, the Jubilee and the NASA MPs appear to agree.
Larry, you're anticipating a debate because as of now, like Council just said, we've not done any amendments. And if there are such amendments, then we'll justify and explain why such is to be done. And it's not for the sole purpose
Larry,
of allowances.
Let me say there's already been observations by the House leadership of the 11th Parliament that the size of parliamentary committees is already too big. Typical departmental committees have around 30 members. If indeed Parliament, the 12th Parliament succeeds in increasing the size of these parliamentary committees, I think it would actually be unfortunate. Let's call a spade a spade. I don't think there's anything wrong with an MP sitting in 2 committees if the purpose is to serve wananchi. But if to accomplish that, you're going to have committees of 40 or 50 members, I think it would be quite unfortunate.
Because under the House rules, which were changed just in June this year...
The committees are ideally supposed to have 17 members.
Yes, exactly. And that was changed in June.
Or 50.
Before it was about 29.
Yeah, it was about 29. And in the 11th, 10th Parliament, we would have people sitting even in 5 committees. So now they have been reduced to a bare 2 committees. And this is for purposes of actually working.
So it's for nothing new. In fact, you're saying that it has reduced from a person being able to sit in 5.
Yeah.
Now they can only sit in 2.
In 2.
So contrary to what the journalists have reported,
you've
actually reduced the sitting.
It's contrary to what, it's not factual, unfounded, and he's only anticipating a debate. He should wait.
And then the number, the membership is about 17 members. Not the 40 or the whatever the 29 is talking about.
Let me contextualize.
Currently, it's not 17, madam. It's higher. You look at the website of Parliament for the 11th Parliament, there were almost 30 per departmental committee. And I think the House leadership has had some retreats. I even had the privilege of addressing them in one of them, where they considered that actually the size of departmental committees is on the higher side. It doesn't assist for efficiency. So if this Parliament ends up increasing the size from 30 to 50, for example, I think I would say objectively, without fear of contradiction, that would be a bad move.
But the bad move that you're anticipating, it is likely not to be there. Because for all purposes and intents, they intend to reduce the membership of the committees to 17. To 17. That's what I know as a parliamentarian.
Okay, just to finish, the reporting in this story said that the reason why this is being seen like that is because the MPs will earn 5,000 shillings per sitting allowance for each of the 2 committees, and the frequency is rather high because in this parliamentary system, a lot of that work is done in these committees. The legislative work is largely carried out in the committees, not in the full plenary of the House.
Let me defend the MPs and say that a sitting allowance of 5,000 is actually quite small compared to all other government bodies where there are sitting allowances. Boards, for example, of parastatals, the sitting allowance is 20,000 shillings per sitting and so on. I think the concern with the MPs has generally been the fear or the perception, which has been borne out by history in the past, that they will inflate their salaries and they have the power to do so. But under the Constitution of Kenya 2010, that power was taken away from them. It is a Salaries and Remuneration Commission that can do so. Of course, they can exert indirect power by harassing SRC, reducing the allowances, threatening, and so on. But to the extent that they are sitting in 2 committees and getting 5,000 shillings per sitting, I don't think Kenyans should be concerned. What they should be concerned is, are they working efficiently, and is their overall remuneration package reasonable?
Okay, great.
And Council, just to add on to what Council is talking about, is it Kenyans or is it Larry? Because I've not heard Kenyans complain about, especially the 5,000 and the nursery.
But Kenyans have complained repeatedly about how much MPs make and all of this.
The issue is not making.
You invite me for another show and I'll bring you my pay slip. I offer myself so that you realize this kind of money and bloated salaries you're talking about, they do not exist.
They don't
I can
exist.
tell Kenyans really you earn better than I do as a member of parliament.
And after not campaigning to get into that position.
And I did not campaign to
get into that position. You didn't campaign to get into that position. So where MPs are concerned and the salaries, if you could just be...
His money is his money.
Some brotherhood.
I don't have constituents.
Yeah, you don't have constituents.
No, but I think MPs as public servants are entitled to more scrutiny than anyone in the private service. So I want to defend Larry for that.
Thank you.
He's earning from the profits of NTV, but public servants earn from taxpayers' money. So I think public servants are entitled to a reasonable compensation, but the public is also entitled to scrutinize more, to criticize even more where they're not happy with what they see.
Real quick, so I have to go to break.
Okay.
No, you should say
in the interest of good fiscal planning and management, it would interest me if these meetings don't have a capping. I mean, what is the limit of meetings you are entitled to hold? Even if 5,000 is little or it's more, don't you have a ceiling?
One committee sitting per day.
Yes.
There is a ceiling.
For four plenary sittings, each plenary sitting has an extension of sitting for only one committee.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Great. We're going to take a quick break right now on Sidebar. When we come back, we're talking about the political developments of the week and what happens next. Okay? Please come back, will you? Come back to Sidebar. We are talking about what an extraordinary year it has been, and mostly because of the political developments. 2 elections, one of which was boycotted by at least one of the major political parties. And here we are right now, coming down to 12th December, and today at least NASA insisting that it will go ahead and swear in Raila Odinga. Whether he'll be sworn in as president or what exactly he'll be sworn in as is not clear. I want to read the statement from NASA today, which was signed by Salim Loan, who's an advisor to Raila Odinga. And the statement says, like I told you at the top of the broadcast, Mr. Odinga's swearing in will be lawful. It will help prevent further polarization by giving Kenyans hope for electoral justice that was denied them under genuinely independent IEBC. Mr. Raila Odinga is holding the country together through his commitment to pursuing constitutional and peaceful means for resolving issues and crimes against Kenyans that have brought us to this sorry and explosive pass. Dr. Gogo, what does this mean exactly? What does NASA intend with this swearing in?
I'll not talk about NASA's intentions, because when I talk about it, they'll start running after NASA. But for all I care, all intents and purposes, Raila Odinga is going to be sworn in on 12th. That's the much I can talk about, especially at this session.
People are calling this treason. It seeks to overthrow a lawfully elected government.
No, there is not going to be any overthrowing or anything. I don't want to talk about treason. I want to talk about 12th. And I want to talk about the swearing in of Raila Odinga. As far as I'm concerned as a NASA MP, that's what I know, and that's what I'm talking about.
Charles, is this treasonable?
Yeah, you know, Larry, when I started my practice of law, like all other advocates of the High Court, I was sworn in. I lifted a Bible with my right hand. I sought to uphold the rule of law and administration of justice without fear or favor. So to be sworn in by itself does not mean engaging in treason. It could actually be a very proud act. I was in court today the whole day, and witnesses were being sworn in to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I think the issue is, what is the substance of this swearing in? Is Raila being sworn in, for example, I'm just giving an example, to be a faithful leader of the opposition, to be a faithful citizen of Kenya, to be the president of Kenya? What is the swearing in about? And I think NASA has not really been telling us exactly what the swearing in is about, what is the content of the oath. But there's been a lot of talk or rhetoric about people's president. And I would say that at this point, it is not possible to answer confidently one way or the other. It may be possible that the legal experts in NASA come up with a very cleverly done swearing ceremony, or it takes an oath. In fact, all Kenyans could take an oath. A year ago, when we were, as lawyers, recognizing or commemorating the death of Willie Kimani, a lawyer who was killed, brutally murdered by administration police officers, we marched from Milimani Court to Supreme Court building, and outside the entrance of the court building, I was one of those who led other advocates in taking an oath, repeating the oath we took when we were sworn into office. So it is possible to have an oath that is completely innocent, completely in harmony and in consonance with the Constitution of Kenya 2010. But it is also possible that the oath that is taken sends a message of attempting to show that the government of Uhuru Kenyatta is not lawful in place, to signal that we want to bring down this government. And in that case, it may be possible under Section 42 say that there is some form of treasonous intent. So at this point in time, we can't tell. It's something we'll determine in a few days' time.
All right. Dr. Mukhwana, is this the way to deliver the electoral justice NASA wants, do you think?
I have no idea. My learned colleague here has been fairly diplomatic in responding to that one. I couldn't help but feel a bit amused. He's right on one accord that at this time it is really speculative to talk about what will be the extent or the import of the swearing in, because as he says, you need to know the context and the content of the oath of affirmation. What is he affirming to do? What is he swearing to do? But Larry, we've heard, and Dr. here has said that he'll be sworn in as a president. And therefore, I can depart a little bit from my brother's interpretation, which, as I've said, has been fairly diplomatic, and say that, look, I'm not so sure that what Honorable Raila has promised to do is just as simple as my brother seems to say. Raila Odinga has said he'll be sworn in as the President of the Republic of Kenya, not Uganda. Now, I want to take a fairly legalistic view, even though we aren't there yet. Swearing in, per the Constitution, is an end product of a process, of an election. The election is stipulated, the presidential election specifically, how to do it, when to do it, is all provided for Article 138, Article 136, all the way up to Article 140. And at the end of the exercise, the body being mandated to manage the election has the authority to declare the result of that election. On the 26th of October, Honorable Raila boycotted the election, and therefore he did not take part. So a clearly legalistic view is that Honorable Raila, having boycotted to take part in the election, cannot therefore be sworn in pursuant to this constitution. I think that should be fairly clear and
correct.
Simple. Yeah. However, Larry, my question which I've asked other audiences are this. Do you think Honorable Raila Odinga doesn't know this? Do you think he doesn't have lawyers as competent as my brother here or myself, or even better? Of course he does. For me, this question needs to be placed in its proper context. And its proper context is not the Constitution. Its proper context is not legalese. Its proper context is political.
Political, absolutely.
And therefore, the swearing in that we have been promised is a political statement. And this political statement must be seen in the context of the elections of 8th of August, the elections of 26th, whose process and management has been disputed. The withdrawal by Honorable Raila Odinga from the 26th of October election was because he believed the process had been so messy that he stood no chance. And therefore, what he now is going to do on 12th must be seen as a continuation of a program of activities to delegitimize the result of October 26th. And he has said, in as much words, that they do not recognize the presidency of Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. And therefore, the swearing in, for me, much as they have cited the constitutional provisions, I see it as a political strategy whose import will be to delegitimize and hopefully bring to the knees the presidency of Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta.
All right.
Whether that will turn to be treasonable or not will largely depend on two things. Number one, what will be the contents of the oath of affirmation? Because the Constitution says no person shall claim to exercise state authority
without
having gone through a process outside this constitution. Therefore, whether the action on October 12th will be treasonable will depend on the content of the oath of affirmation, and 2, Honorable Raila's actions on that day and thereafter. And most importantly, the reaction of the government.
Thank you, Rari. My view and my take is that there's nothing that would cleanse any treason intent from NASA coalition. I must also accept that any coalition or any private club or any people who assemble together for a common view, they have the opportunity to continue doing their business without anybody bothering them. So in this case, I want to state it categorically that NASA, they'll be doing their activities and their political activities as a coalition. And in this case, we as Jubilee, we are not scared of hearing that they are swearing a president, a NASA coalition president who was declared as a presidential elect, I don't know by who. I don't know who will be the who will be the registrar. I don't know who will be the chief justice. I don't know who will come in as an international guest from whichever country to come and witness the swearing in of one Raila Odinga. But my point is is that Kenyans have settled and they know for real we are waiting for another election in the year 2022. So in this case, any other act, the only intention or the NASA intention led by Raila Odinga would be polarizing this nation and bringing the economy of this country into its knee. And for this case, the constitution, no one is above the law, no one is above the constitution. So in this case, I would only say sheria ichukue mkono yake.
I would just like to
probably Dr.
Before his Dr. Gogo.
I would want to emphasize at this point that there is the content of the swearing in, and there is also the form. We are not talking about the form of the swearing in, but there is a content and there is a form. And for all I care, it's not a political gimmick. This is a serious exercise that is well planned. I'm glad that you recognize that there are council that are with the side that Raila is in. I want to actually appreciate what council has articulated, and he's talked about, he's actually separated what is being squeezed in as treason. I mean, people want to up it and want to really make a very big fuss out of it. And this is what is going to polarize the country, not Raila. We normally have election results. And we get these results from a process. And then the process should be good enough so that people can appreciate the results. So if the process is questionable, then if the results are also questioned, then we should not also now start bringing in issues that are going to bring, nobody wants to do anything that is treasonable in this country. Nobody invited the other in Kenya. We are all Kenyans. And we should also all try to maintain the law. Nobody has said that anybody is going to go about against the law. So I'm just wondering, why are people preempting things that are non-existent? What has been said and what is clear and that is going to happen on the 12th is that Raila Amolo Odinga is going to be sworn in. And is going to be sworn in.
One Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. There can never be two presidents at the same time.
Excuse me, Mheshimiwa.
And for any
I give you your time to talk. Because when I'm talking and you're talking as though I'm not talking, I mean, I think that is going to bring disharmony.
Come on, go ahead.
So just take your time, talk when I'm talking, just give me time. I hope we are good at that.
Go ahead.
This is what I'm trying to say about Raila Amolo Odinga. What is outside there, what he has talked about. And probably he's going to talk about something else tomorrow. And at the day that he's going to come. So why are people preempting? He should be given time. He's a Kenyan and he's also a leader. Nobody wants to go against the law. All of us probably, there are people who are specialized in the study of law. They are going to do interpretations. We are lawmakers. And what there is that let us not preempt things that are already not there.
I thought you just declared that one Raila Amolo Odinga will be sworn in as a president. So in this case, I'm not preempting anything. I'm quoting your words. And in this case, I just want to remind Kenyans and my good friend, Honorable Lady here, that we have a president who is sworn in, and congratulate them.
Not Honorable Lady, I'm the member of
Honorable Lady, thank you, Honorable member for Rangwe, that we can only have one president at any given time. And I want to imagine for for the same reason that NASA members of
we are not
parliament,
struggling
you have resumed back after your boycott.
We are talking about treason.
Let her speak.
Amolo Odinga has not talked about treason anywhere.
Okay.
So let it not be dragged in here and then it be made substantive. That is what I'm trying to talk about. It's your time, Weshimiwa.
Please make your point.
Thank you. Any attempt of any individual in this country, because politics are over and the elections are over, this is water under the bridge, in this case would only be interpreted by the Constitution as treason act, and this is what we should be discussing. And from confirmation of somebody's mouth right on this table that Raila will be sworn in, that is treason, and that's what the country should be preparing for.
Sworn in as well.
Yeah.
Okay, the U.S. Embassy put out a statement today. The U.S. Embassy statement on the U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, Donald Yamamoto, who's been in Kenya. And part of the statement says the U.S. also urges opposition leaders to work within Kenya's laws to pursue the reforms they seek and to avoid extra constitutional actions such as the proposed inauguration ceremony on December 12.
My take and my view is that I'll concur with the thoughts and agree that there's no activity, no drama would amount to bringing a new president at this given point, at this given time.
Okay.
I would challenge NASA leadership. They have members of parliament in the parliament to join hands with the rest of the people, and we change the laws, whether it is the electoral law or anything that you feel you're disgruntled about.
All right.
We work towards it.
Dr.
No, it's not about NASA. It's about it's about the whole country. It's not necessarily about NASA.
The people
and
who
it's
are
not about
complaining.
Raila. It's not about today. It's about tomorrow.
Okay.
So what there is, they take on the
US Embassy statement?
Embassy statement. They have a right to talk about it. They are talking about things, anything that is to be done should be done within the law.
The law, yes.
Yeah. And Raila has not talked about doing anything outside the law.
All right.
Yeah.
They also go on to say, Dr. Lilian, Charles, that we call for an immediate, sustained, open and transparent national conversation involving all Kenyans to build national unity, address long-standing issues and resolve the deep divisions that the electoral process has exacerbated. So they seem to be talking about this dialogue, which people have different interpretations of. Salim Loan's statement on behalf of Raila Odinga today said he's open to dialogue as long as electoral justice is on the table. Where does that leave us?
You know, Larry, while the Weshimiwas were talking, I was wondering whether we have directed the conversation correctly. What I thought we ought to have done is to begin by delving on one question. Do you have a problem or don't we?
People disagree about that question, whether or not we have a problem.
Thank you. Sorry?
People disagree about whether or not we have a problem.
Precisely. So that obviously Mweshimiwa here will say there is no problem, it's water under the bridge, let's move on. Mweshimiwa here will say, no, there is a problem. Then we'll pursue each side of the argument and look at the merits and demerits. Because if we go the direction the two honorable members of parliament have taken, then we reduce a very serious argument to a pedestrian debate. First, we must appreciate, and this I keep saying, even at the risk of being labeled pro-Jubilee or pro-NASA, that a constitutional process has taken place. That constitutional process was an election, and the president was thereafter sworn in. The legal effect of that is that the legal question has been settled. What, in my view, ought to be looked at is, having settled the legal question, why is the country still not settled? And that brings the second limb of what I think ought to inform our debate today. If half, as estimated, of the country is saying we do not recognize that legally elected president, what is the problem? And that brings to the issue of legitimacy, which then some of us as lawyers again seem to interpret legitimacy and legality as the same thing. I have struggled in the course of the day to look at more definitions of what legitimacy is. And the very basic definition of legitimacy is that it has to do with the soundness of the process, the acceptability of the process,
The end of the process.
the reasonableness. So it appears then that if you look at that very basic definition of legitimacy, you have to look at how the process that led to the presidential result was conducted. And if we delve into that, then you have to stop and listen to what the opposition is saying, and they are saying that, look, yes, you wobbled through and have now the final stamp saying you are the president.
The legal stamp.
The legal stamp saying you are the president.
Right.
But the process was not reasonable, it was not acceptable, hence the outcry that you are not our president.
Larry.
Now, President Kenyatta said, and I took him seriously, that he's open to dialogue once he's in office. For me, what we should be discussing on this debate is which way for the dialogue. Because when you talk about everything having been done and dusted, then you lose a major point, that half the country has not accepted the legality.
So everything is not done and dusted?
Everything is not done and dusted, because legality is stamped, as I've said.
Okay.
But where there is no acceptability. What are the reasons why a section of Kenya is saying you are not our president? But that is the issue we need to address.
All right.
Larry, before I'm adding on to something that is
really quickly?
Very quickly.
Yes.
We have symbols of national unity. We have the coat of arms. We have the national anthem. We have our flag, which has been voted the best in the world because of its content. These were things that were...
And we have the president.
They were put in place years back, and there has never been any issue about the coat of arms. There's never been any issue about our national anthem. There's never been any issue about our flag. And another very important symbol of national unity is the office of the president, the presidency. The bearer notwithstanding. So what is this big deal about the presidency that can never, this country can never be united about a common president?
Okay.
Yeah, that's the question we need to talk about here.
Larry, this is a difficult conversation, but I want to just make a few points. The first point I want to make is that there are thousands of lawyers in this country, advocates of the High Court, who are all quite competent in one area or the other. In most court disputes where you have two lawyers, one representing each side, the judge still has to make a decision. And the fact that a lawyer is competent, who is advising one side or the other, does not mean that that side will carry the day or justice favors them. So it is true, NASA have competent lawyers, Jubilee have competent lawyers, the government is represented by a competent attorney general. It does not mean that because they are competent on all sides, what every side does is in accordance with the law. And I think it is only events which will happen after this that will determine that. The second thing I want to say is this. During the election season, and I'm not talking about now after we've had a president sworn in, but beginning with the election season, I noticed a certain discordance or separation of the political from the legal. As if you could perform an act and choose to say this one is only political and not legal, or perform another act and say this one is only legal and not political. This has even come up after the second election. Jubilee, yes. A lot of them have said legitimacy is not a legal problem. Yes. What I would say is that I'm finding concern with the stance of both Jubilee and NASA on this issue. I don't think you can neatly separate the legal from the political. You can't do a political action and say it has no legal consequences. You can't say that the law favors us and therefore there should be no political restlessness or concern about the outcome of that process. The third point I wanted to say is that I think it is clear, and it is probably the one common point we have among the political actors in Kenya today, that the outcome of the process that gave rise to the swearing in of President Uhuru Kenyatta for his second term was not fully satisfactory to a large number of Kenyans, and that there is a need for constructive dialogue to see how to resolve whether it is the political or the legal issues that cause such a strain on our body politic, on our institutions, such dissatisfaction and disaffection among many people. President Uhuru Kenyatta himself, in his inauguration speech, said that he wants to reach out, he wants to engage in inclusivity. Raila Amolo Odinga himself has insisted that this country needs to engage in deep-seated reforms. I think the question is Uhuru going about it the right way? Is he too aloof now that he's in office? Is Raila going about it the right way? Is he too aggressive now that he feels the government is focusing on a different agenda? Is there room for third parties, civil society, the media, and professionals to come in and mediate on this issue, which is a genuine issue? And ultimately, if this is not done in time, will the two sides have ended up entrenching their position so deeply, like happened during the First World War, when you had these trenches that remained stationary for years, and it was so difficult to overrun the position of the enemy that there's no movement forward? So I think there has to be an appeal to both sides not to entrench their positions, or to recognize their positions but be ready to move. So for Uhuru Kenyatta, he must be able to recognize that there are legitimate concerns, political and legal, by NASA. NASA must be ready to recognize that Uhuru has been sworn in for a second term, so that as they are coming together, they are able to start from those positions, but accomplish something that will be in the interest of majority of Kenyans.
The complication with the dialogue, before you come in, hang on, I just want to give her a chance, but the complication with the dialogue, because there's almost 2 or 3, maybe more sides to it. The dialogue that President Kenyatta has said before is that he will engage Raila Odinga like he would with any other Kenyan. Raila Odinga today saying through Salim Loan that he's open to dialogue as long as, this, unlike 2008, electoral justice is on the agenda. Otherwise, he's not doing this. Then there's this national conversation the Americans are recommending to make sure that the divisions that exist in the country are handled. So even on dialogue, there's disagreement.
Larry, before you allow the politicians, allow me to pick up from before you allow them.
You did have some substantive contribution. Let me let her go
it's
first.
interesting we talk as if we have a constitution which so govern the politicians, and we only got one constitution, which is used by every Kenyan for whatever circumstances. And in this case, I would really love to remind Kenyans that if there's anything that's going to be done after the day President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta was sworn in, is misplaced in the Constitution. And the only thing which I would agree with my friends from NASA or Raila Odinga is on a dialogue. And I must confirm that President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, like he stated, he's open to dialogue. Now, wait a minute. Are we going to dialogue when there are activities going on and somebody purporting to be the president-elect and is going to be sworn in from 12th of December? So let Raila Odinga first finish the activities that are before him on 12th, and then we can sit. Then we see who is the president, who is legitimate, and who is not legitimate.
If I may just add on to what Mheshimiwa is saying. Oftentimes, when there are crises and there is chest thumping, nothing much can ever be achieved.
So you do agree NASA is also chest thumping?
I have talked about chest thumping. I've not talked about Jubilee. I've not talked about NASA. But what is going to bring this country to sanity is we must really realize that we are Kenyans. We must realize that Kenya is ours. And we must also realize that nobody is running away from Kenya. We all belong to Kenya. When Kenya is burning, it burns with everybody. I want to take this position to really empathize with the position of the people, the families who have lost their loved ones in this struggle. This is something that cannot be just looked down upon. I want to look at the loss of property. I want to look at the time that has been economic loss. If you look at the returns that most companies are giving, they're negative, 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 negative. So it is not about just thumping from whatever there is. I love the bit that is coming up about legality and legitimacy. Objectively, the legal part may have been accomplished. But when it comes to legitimacy, when we sit here, I can only talk when Larry gives me a chance. I cannot just talk because I'm here. And as long as we embrace that as Kenyans, as long as we want to give each one of us a chance to listen, not because we are really on such a very good legal platform, but because we are Kenyans, because we belong to Kenya, and we don't want any. Kenya is rated very highly, and I got an opportunity to go to to Belgium for SCP EU. joint parliamentary session. And Kenya is regarded very, very highly. And we must work as a nation to retain that position as a nation that is able to guide East Africa. So it is not just about chest thumping. What I'm talking about here is, are we able to sit down as a nation and not disregard a leader of the repute of Raila Amolo Odinga and say that I'm going to engage him just like any other Kenyan? There is no way you can regard, you can talk on a table and talk to Raila Amolo Odinga the way you talk to Dr.Lilian Gogo, who is the MP for Rangwe. Raila has his own position in this country. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta also has his own position in this country. We must have sobriety, and this will come when there is no chest thumping. I must repeat, there is a legality, but as long as legality is there, somebody would use, that is why I brought in the issue of the form. The swearing in involves the content and the form. One may have the form, but the content may guide the legitimacy. So it is really very important that we look at these things critically, sit down, give it time, not wait and want to see and choreograph things on how to kill Kenyans on the 12th. Honestly, it is not right.
Nobody's killing Kenyans.
All right.
I gave you your time to talk. I hope
nobody's,
we have agreed
I'm confirming to you, nobody's killing Kenyans.
No, you are not in the bit. I don't see you having ever killed anyone. So I witnessed myself when Kenyans were being killed. And I have moved around. There was a 7-year-old who was down on his blood lying. If you didn't see that, then you are talking about nobody is killing Kenyans. So many Kenyans have died. Irrespective of the political divide, very many Kenyans have died.
Because it didn't happen.
And anybody who wants to drag in issue of treason and whatever and wanting to say, let's see what happens on the 12th, let us be Kenyans. That is my contribution on it, Larry.
All right. I see some reaction to this, and Kenyans are divided on this, as you would expect. Let me just read two. One is Nyakundi Omete, who says, there's a sober debate on which way for Kenya, but politicians are further dividing the country by their hardline stance. We have a political problem that can only be sorted politically. The constitutional process is water under the bridge, not the political process. And Campus Voter says, dialogue after one has won the election is disingenuous, especially when it could have happened before that election. What is your reaction to that?
Sorry?
Dialogue after one has won the election is disingenuous, this person says, especially if that dialogue could have happened before the election. Because that is also a conversation that has come up repeatedly.
Look, it cannot be too late in the day to salvage the country. And Larry, when I request that I speak after my learned colleague was speaking, I wanted to emphasize on this thin line between legality and legitimacy. Mm-hmm. He's so right when he says that the attitude by politicians prior to the election, and even after, I think, has been that you can do things politically and ignore legality, and vice versa. It's really a question of, between the egg and the chicken, which one comes first? We have the law, but the same politicians are the ones who amend the law to solve a political problem, as was experienced with the Election Amendment Act, where there was no consultation per Article 10 that behoves of the leadership to be consultative in all respect, including the IBC Act. For me, the point that we must dwell on, number one, the leadership of both sides must learn to respect each other.
That's true.
That is the biggest problem we have in this country. You do not talk so arrogantly, so proudly, when there is a risk that this country could actually flare up. So the first thing is, Honorable Raila Odinga and Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta must talk to their gatekeepers. They're the main problem.
That's true.
To tone down and understand that, yes, their jobs may be on the line if a negotiation leads to a change in government structure. Yes, their deals, as the politicians are used to, may be on the line. But what is bigger on the line is the life of 48 million Kenyans. And therefore, they must stop chest thumping. Number two, President Kenyatta now ought to feel more secure because constitutionally, he's in the office. The legality question has been settled. And that should give him the confidence to invite Honorable Raila Odinga with humility and respect like a fellow leader, without derogatory references like saying, you come and have a cup of tea. Because Raila Odinga has made his fair share of contribution to this country. just like Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta. So we need to have a dialogue. I'm so encouraged that the Catholic bishops have set in motion a national dialogue forum, which ought to bring Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Raila Odinga to a negotiating table. To be fair to Raila, he has said he's not interested in the much ridiculous Mkate. He's talking about electoral justice. From what Mheshimiwa is saying here, he's saying that they must stop what they're doing. When they're done, then they can negotiate. Do not worry about the grandstanding, Larry. In 2007, it was worse.
Yeah, that's true.
That is what the gatekeepers do. Until the country is thrown to the dogs, then only do they wake up and say, now we can talk. What is it that happened on 26th that has made half the country say, Uhuru is not my president? That is where the rain began beating us, and that's what we ought to be discussing. It is indeed a political problem.
It's actually not half the country.
Estimated half the country. We have not done an empirical research, but you're saying estimated half the country. You want to put it? You want to put it at a third? I have no problem.
Even if it is an eighth, yes, the presidency should unite the country.
This is a competition. You don't expect everybody to be excited about losing.
Without wanting to tangle much, there is a lot we can talk about the process of 26th as lawyers. The 8th of August elections were annulled and reasons were given. The process for preparing for October 26th, the fresh process, how do we say it was credible? Was it reasonable? When, and I give you two examples, the very electronic transmission system that the court ordered must be subjected to audit went into October 26th without a public bipartisan audit.
Did you
take
an initiative to
just a moment, Mheshimiwa.
Let him finish.
Push me to that, so let me try and push. Number two, when the chairman of the IEBC, 3 days to the election, stands up and says, sorry, I can't grant you a credible, independent, free and fair election. And 3 days down the road, he says, no, now I'm ready, we can move.
He said he was satisfied. When he announced the results, said he had been satisfied.
Yes,
the
3 days down the road, he says, now I'm ready, I'm going to give the right thing. And those reasons are not subjected to a bipartisan, open audit. And lastly, when the GPRS system functionality was actually proved in court, claimed in court, that the GPRS was switched off, and therefore the alleged 100 kits that were stolen were still returning results. When that allegation was not substantially subjected to an audit that is open, transparent, bipartisan, and the same alleged kits are used in transmitting to 26 results, would you then, just a moment, I've used the word alleged, would you then blame a section of the population when they say that this process that produced the presidency was not reasonable, was not credible, was not believable? So we are saying that the legality is done, but listen to the legitimacy concerns that are being raised. That's all we are saying.
Okay.
Larry, let me say something.
Yes, sir.
We got the first detailed judgment of the Supreme Court.
Correct.
Came out on 1st of September. The second one is expected by 11th of December. That is by Monday next week. For me as a lawyer, I'm looking forward to the second judgment because I think our country has been in a very partisan and toxic political environment that even as lawyers and as academics, as practitioners, we've not been able to honestly and fairly critique the judgments. And I think it's only when the two of them come out that we'll be able to critique them. What were their strengths? What were their weaknesses? So that even from 12th of December going forward, we will have 2 detailed judgments of the Supreme Court that I think will be the launching pad, even for reflection on what are the weaknesses of our electoral system, what are the weaknesses of our constitution and laws, what is the political deficit of our acceptability that we need to address. So I think that would be a useful starting point. The second thing I would like to say is this.
Before you say your second thing, the reason why I guess the country is here is because those 2 detailed judgments, when we have them 11th December, is there will be detailed judgments that arrived at vastly different outcomes. which led to this current crisis.
Correct.
That's okay, so long as the reasoning is consistent, or there is some harmony in the interpretation of the law. And if there is inconsistency, we'll still be able to critique them. You have all times cases involving, assuming it's bank and lenders. Not all the cases end the same way, because even though the principles of law are the same, the facts are different from case to case.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, I believe that the starting point of this future engagement, after we've seen these two detailed decisions, will be at two levels. First, at the level of institutions. We really must respect the institutions which are in the Constitution, because they're only 7 years old. Some of them are even less old, like the county governments came into force in 2013, so they're only 4 years old. And that has to be the first place in which we have to engage. But secondly, we have to remember that Article 1, the preamble of the Constitution, talk about popular sovereignty, that everything begins with the people, so that the people, through any other forums, any other arrangements, even people assembly, I think, are a legitimate forum. Any forum where you bring people together and can engage in some form of constructive engagement, and need to start coming up with a solution. So the grassroots, as well as institutions that are a bit above, we need to engage both of them. I think one of the things that is critical is when you go to negotiations, you have to try and avoid coming up with preconditions of negotiations. One has to go to discussions freely. The last point I wanted to...
So NASA should not be saying, as long as there's electoral justice on the table.
I think when you go for discussions, you should be, both sides should be allowed to say what they would like to discuss. And once it's put on the table, you start the discussion. If NASA want electoral justice, fine. If Jubilee want recognition of legitimacy of Uhuru, fine. Put all of them on the table and discuss them. But the last thing I wanted to say, which for me has been a concern the last few weeks, is an idea that happened during the Second World War. They were called peace offensives. What would happen is that when you have these people, stakeholders, who would start talking about peace and preaching peace, one of the things that would happen, very paradoxically, is that the combatants or the belligerents on the ground would have heightened aggressive activity, because they wanted to create a new reality before beginning the peace talks. It's like, before having a ceasefire, can I get an extra 100 kilometers of territory, so that when you're in the status quo, I'm in a position that I think is okay. And I found that during this electoral process and up to today, there is a tendency both at the Jubilee side and in the NASA side to engage in heightened aggression, with the idea that I want to create a status quo that will favor me when we go into this constructive dialogue. And I think we also, it's like a bargaining point. And I think that's a place where we also need to appeal to both sides to be reasonable, to think about the interests of the country and not just their own interests as a section of the country.
Okay.
Because I think both sides carry the aspirations of big chunks of the Kenyan population. We must ask the Kenyan population to respect the laws. We must also ask the Kenyan population to respect the fact that politics matters. You can't close off politics and say we'll have 4 years of development. No, politics matters, and you need solutions that make a majority of the country politically contented. You can't achieve 100%, but you must strive to get as much political consensus as possible. That's the way the country can achieve its potential.
Okay. Using your previous argument, Dr. Gogo, somebody has asked me to ask you, what would happen if, let's say, George Oner, who you defeated in the nominations, came up now to Parliament and said they're the MP for Rangwe?
That George Oner is the MP for Rangwe?
Yes, you defeated him in the nominations.
Well, I want to take, it's a good idea that they've brought in George Oner. I've never had an opportunity to...
No, this person's argument is that...
I'm just going to get into what you're talking about. Right. To have an... To talk about George Oner is first MP for Rangwe constituency after being divided from the greater Rangwe. And where George Oneri is concerned, I wouldn't see him wanting to come to Parliament to say that, because he didn't go to court to contest the results of the elections. And besides, we are working out of mutual respect. I don't chest thump. I actually mentioned the word chest thumping. Even after being elected the member for Rangwe, I've never chest thumped for the Wood Madam. I call him the son of Madam because I respect him, and he did quite a bit of work in Rangwe, and it's my turn to work. And I have no issue. And if he were to come to Parliament and say that he's also the member of Parliament for Rangwe, we will deal with it from that point. For now, as it is right now, he has not done that. But when he decides to come to Parliament and he wants to, and he says that he indicates that he's also the member, and we would be sitting, the two of us, at that point, then we will deal with it. We will cross the bridge when we get there. I don't want to preempt anything.
Isn't that what you're suggesting at the presidential level?
What there is, I want to repeat this one, Larry. Kenya belongs to all of us. And there is nothing that is as good as humility. And leadership is a responsibility and is a calling. And especially if you serve in the office of the president, and especially if you are elected as a member, as a president of a republic, it is your sole duty and responsibility to come from the high seat and make the country united. Whoever sits in that position must look for means, soft or hard, to make sure that this country is united, but not at the expense of ignoring others. It is always good to listen. Listen to, you talked about gatekeepers. Uhuru has no problem. Raila Amolo Odinga has no problem. The problem is the gatekeepers, both on both sides. But for all I care, nobody is going to look down upon Raila Amolo Odinga and say, it is water under the bridge, let's move on. Uhuru indicated he is ready for dialogue. Raila Amolo Odinga is also indicating that he is ready for dialogue. Let us have a common ground where this can be made to its fruition. Okay. We should have a situation where we should have people dialogue.
All right.
I think it's my time now.
Honorable Guru.
Thank you. That's interesting, you know, to hear the Honorable Dr. Gogo say that she will deal with the immediate member of Parliament when that time comes. And it just shows that everything about what we do, whether is the constitutionality of the Supreme Court and the electoral law, it is all about politics. And politics, it is a perception, my good friend, that you'd say that the president is legally in office, but he's not accepted and that he's not legitimate. Because all these things are political perceptions. And I think the problem with this country is that we behave as if we do not have a constitution that really governs any arm of the government. It would be wrong of us to preempt the looting, and the looting ruling that is likely to come on 11th, like we said, from the Supreme Court. And in this case, the same Supreme Court is the one that nullified President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta win. Is the same court that handed over and declared him as the president and validly elected president of the Republic of Kenya. So in this case, what I would say is this. The problem with both parties, Jubilee or NASA, if there's any problem that is existing, it is political. And political solution is not going to be found in such platforms like the one we have today. It's not going to be found at what you call Jacaranda meetings. It will not be found at Mandamano in the streets of Nairobi. If we want such, I would call for the church or any other arbitrator who would come and bring forth dialogue. Because as much as we talk about dialogue, the president says we want to dialogue, then Raila Odinga is there, he wants to be sworn in as a president, which I'm terming it as treason. So in this case, I would say this Jubilee is not chest thumping. We are open to dialogue with people who are ready for a dialogue, because you cannot stand and tell Kenyans we are ready to stop fighting, we are ready to sit and talk, and yet you're coming forth with conditions. So the only option that Jubilee has, and the only option that this country has, is to either give in, to allow somebody else to be sworn in as anything else, and not as the president of the Republic of Kenya. And in this case, I don't say this is hypocritical. It cannot be right that you purport to be standing and to be speaking the views of, I heard you talk about talk about the half of the country, and yet at your best interest, you only think it can either be you and not any other person. And I challenge, even moving forward, even as any other election comes forth, mention 2022, is the high time Uhuru is exiting, Raila Odinga exits, and get a new breed and a new generation that can sit and ask themselves what is the way forward about electoral reforms.
I have a follow-up question for you, but Dr. Alutalala wants to push back on something she said.
Yes, in fact, I was going to say before she veered into quite others, which elicit other reactions, that she has got it right at the end of it all. She acknowledges that the problem we have is a political problem. And she goes further to say that that cannot be solved in this forum. Yes, this is a think tank forum.
Yeah.
It ought to be solved rightly by neutral arbiters. The Catholic Church has taken a lead. Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has accepted that there is a problem. Honorable Raila Odinga has said they are willing to discuss. Larry, we have a solution in sight. Number two, Mheshimiwa, I like your emotive reference to respect for the Constitution. Lawyers, public lawyers call it the rule of law. I will also urge you in the same breath to advise the government, because now you believe in government, that kindly also respect the rule of law when it comes to matters where the opposition is involved. For example, the other day, Larry here was under a lot of stress when Wangusu told him that he should not broadcast live events. That is against the law. When Honorable Raila Odinga came,
from US,
the rally was banned despite notice have been given. That is not the rule of law, and many others. So we have a solution. It's a political problem. Let's dialogue.
Okay.
But in the meantime, would you speak very well. Would you please impress upon the government that by actually bastardizing and defiling the Constitution,
oh, come on.
Yes, that is what it is. That is
no, please.
That is what it is.
I mean, you're learned, brother.
That is what it is.
Please. Let's have some respect.
No, just a moment. What is the definition of bastardization? Is to make it illegitimate. When you don't apply the Constitution, you're making it illegitimate.
You cannot send me to the government and ask me to advise the government when you verge off nasty words.
You know,
okay. I think hang on. I just want to follow this up. You don't think that the government has bastardized the Constitution, like he says?
No. I don't think so. Because what he should be telling us, he should be telling Kenyans that the beginning of your rights is the end of another person's right. So if you want to legitimize, if you want to come here and tell Kenyans that Baba, his rally being cancelled or his procession from Jomo Kenyatta International Airport to Nairobi was not right, if it was to put the lives of Kenyans at risk, and even what followed, it was wrong. That's the reason it was pulled down. The same way, if you're driving at night and driving when you're drunk, it is your freedom to drive, but it's not your freedom to drive at risk of other Kenyans. So my point is one, please, if you want the government to be advised, we cannot start at a bad taste.
Unfortunately, if I engage my colleague here on the limitation of freedoms, I think I'll make better progress.
Yeah, anytime.
But on that, I beg to stop at that, because I'm not sure.
Let me follow up with the Mheshimiwa here. Yes. How do you think, or what do you see as the way out of the divisions in the country currently? The president said he wants to heal the country. It's one of his priorities.
Oh yes.
Is dialogue the way to do it, or do you have another prescription?
You know, shortly before we went for the fresh election, we had indicated as a government that the only dialogue we want is dialogue at the ballot box. And in this case, the reason why we stated so is because our attempt to bring forth our brothers to the table without conditions and ultimatums didn't bear any fruit. And in this case, we had no choice but to obey the court and follow the court ruling and go ahead and conduct the fresh elections, which we participated and NASA did not accept to participate. Now, let me ask you a simple question, which Mama Mboga out there will ask you. If you're a woman and you met a friend of yours going for, it's called an antenatal clinic, heavily pregnant, and you decide that you do not want to wait for your baby, and you decide that along the way, I don't want this baby because the conditions which I asked for were not met, do you have any reason to go and complain that the baby who you saw crying at that end is not that lady's baby? I mean, in a simple way, if you did not participate in a process which was called upon by the Supreme Court, it's only hypocritical to stand and start declaring yourself a president-elect and even to assume that you can be sworn.
Next time, Mheshimiwa, through Larry, Next time, if you're woman enough, don't give women examples. There are so many examples that you can give. Please spare women. And
they are the same women. They are the same women who are suffering others. Come on, stop being personal. Stop being personal. Being offensive. You're a woman like I am.
Just what I'm trying to say. No, you cannot be woman like me. This is what I'm trying to say.
I think this has now degenerated. Dr. Gogo. Please make your point.
I want to make my point, but I don't want us to be overridden by certain aspects. We must observe the rule of the law. And when somebody starts saying that the movement of Raila Amolo Odinga from JKIA to town is going to jeopardize the lives of others, that actually offends me.
I don't think I want to return to that issue.
And that is not our subject.
Let's get way forward, please.
So we just have to get it off the system and discuss what is bedeviling us. We have a legitimacy issue here. And as I said earlier in my point, I indicated that presidency is a unifying factor. And Kenya, like never before, must be united as a nation. That is something that should not be debated upon. Whether it's going to come from Uhuru Kenyatta, whether it's going to come from Raila Amolo Odinga, as the leaders of this nation, we respect them. I have no problem with Uhuru Kenyatta. I have no problem with Raila. But what I'm trying to say is that we need a united country.
All right.
We can only get this unity through respect, through recognition on the contributions that each one of us, even in this small room. I love the element of bringing in the members, council here. There is something that they know that I don't know, because they have studied that area and they know the law that governs what we are talking about here. I can talk about the political bit, but they will talk about the legal bit.
Okay.
But moving forward, Kenyans must respect each other. Kenyans must give each other room for dialogue. Kenyans must give each other room for making Kenya be where it used to be again.
The complication in this situation we're in, Charles, is that both sides accuse the other of having led us here or trying to divide the country or trying to take us into madness, and they say we need to unite the country, but they disagree on how to do it. Dialogue, they disagree on that. So in your mind, beyond the legal, the political, how do we heal the divisions that exist and which have been caused by this election?
Okay, first I'll throw a spanner in the works, Larry.
Okay.
We will not heal the divisions 100%. I don't think there's any country in the world where there are no divisions. And unfortunately, elective politics tends to deepen rather than to reduce divisions. The divisions you notice, for example, in the United States of America after the election of Donald Trump have continued for the last 10, 11 months since you were sworn in January this year. The divisions in the United Kingdom after the Brexit vote, when they voted to leave the European Union, have continued until today. Yes. Scotland is threatening to break off.
Right.
London is unhappy with the rest of England and so on. So I think it would be too idealistic to assume we'll heal all the divisions. We have deep historical causes of some of our divisions, our ethnic divisions, our colonial history, and so on. What we can do and what we ought to do, and I'm now coming to answer your question, is to see what steps can we take to reduce the divisions, to try and increase the sense of unity and harmony. Some of the solutions are already in the Constitution, like a greater emphasis on devolution. Recently, I was talking to some members of the Kisumu County administration who had traveled to Makueni County to benchmark on how village councils are working. And when I listened to them talking, I got extremely impressed at the power of devolution to transform lives of people on the ground. So, of course, some of the solutions are in the Constitution. We have such an incredibly desperate fight for power at the presidential level that whatever outcome you end up with, there'll be a big segment of the population that is dissatisfied. Yes. But we still need to address the national politics. People have come up with all kinds of proposals saying change the system of governance, of government, have a rotational presidency, all kind. And I'm not inclined to any of the solutions that I've had, because I think it's just, personally, I think it's a cheap way of moving from one system that has been tried and found wanting to another that has not been tried, but when it's tried, it will be found even more wanting. I think there needs to be a commitment of all of us to deal with those weaknesses we have found in the current system without necessarily having to change it. We had one system of government that served Kenya well for 50 years. Not so well, but at least it served us. We remained united, even though there was all kinds of repression here and there. We now have a new system of government that has not served us for even 10 years. Can we solve it? I used to tell my friends during the Constitution referendum period in 2010, when they would ask me, which system is better? Is it parliamentary? Is it presidential? Is it hybrid? And I used to tell them, look, you'll find some countries like the United Kingdom where parliamentary system is working fantastically. You'll find countries like United States where presidential system is working fantastically. Some countries with hybrid system working fantastically. I think France is maybe towards hybrid system. And you find other countries where it's working terribly. So you may be a group of people who, whichever system you choose, you'll always do a bad job of it. And probably the issue is to try to see what do we need to resolve to make the system work well for us. I think, of course, there has to be some constructive dialogue, but I think constructive dialogue is becoming more and more like a cliche.
Right.
I think that it's not a question of getting Uhuru and Raila into a room. Because I think this country is more important. It has 45 million Kenyans than just 2 Kenyans. They're among our most important Kenyans. Each of them has been voted in by almost half of the country. But the future of this country is not the fate of just 2 people. We need to get more people talking.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to identify what solutions beyond devolution and what is in our constitution should be there. Finally, I would say, I think we're in a constitutional moment when we should start considering, after one cycle of full implementation of the constitution in terms of devolution and a government under the Constitution of Kenya 2010, when we can check what are the weaknesses we've identified and change them for the better of the country.
Do you think Kenya should give up on this idea of healing the divisions? Is there any degree of them that needs to be healed, or some drive towards unity, or accept that politics, democracy by nature leads to these divisions and they're okay?
One of the fascinating books I read a few years ago was by Caroline Elkins. It's on the Mau Mau
Britain's Gulag.
Yeah, Britain's Gulag.
It's a fantastic book.
And in the book, she says something that really struck me. That for many of those people who are caught up in the Mau Mau issue and the detention camps and the process, very brutal processes of the British government to try and suppress the Mau Mau, including the villagers who were supporting it but were not actively involved. They continued with traumas and suppressed experiences. They moved on without getting that full healing because life has to go on. And I think you'll find in all countries where there's been some form of traumatic national or a large-scale event, that majority of the people, unfortunately, don't get benefit of counselors. They don't go for too much counseling. They just find how to move on. And unfortunately, even in our country, even as much as we try to have everyone pour out their heart and try to get full healing, many people eventually end up having to move on, like the way when somebody has broken up with a loved one sometimes, or a loved one has died, you move on with a bit of healing, not as much as you'd have wanted to have. So I would not say that we navel gaze, we engage in such navel gazing that until everyone says I'm 100% satisfied, we can't move on. We have to keep moving on because life moves on. But at the same time, we shouldn't just paper up the cracks and assume that people will heal themselves, because the divisions are getting deeper. The Kriegler report, on post-election violence of 2007, the Ndungu report on land allocations, irregular land allocations, the reports of the panel of eminent personalities of Kofi Annan, and all these have come up with fantastic prescriptions, very insightful. They've reflected on the problems in our country. I think we need to dust off some of these reports, the dust from some of these reports, and check, because part of the solution has already been prescribed in reports over the last 10 to 15 years.
All right. I want to take final comments because I think this is a discussion we've been having for about 130 days now since the August 8th election. I don't think we're about to finish it tonight or this year. It will be a continuing process. I want to get your final comments. I think Charles kind of encapsulated his very well on how You talked about it already. How do you see the way out of maybe healing the divisions, maybe making sure that there's not one half of the country, Dr. Alutalala, as you say, that's aggrieved, or, and I hate to use this phrase, the way forward. I think the way forward assumes there's one kind of enlightened path that we can all follow and everything falls in place, and this is much more complicated than that.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. First and foremost, I shared myself with my comments largely what my brother said, but I want to say, Larry, that the Constitution is not the problem, the laws are not the problem.
Not the problem.
The problem is that we do not have men and women of integrity who can uphold and implement the laws as they were envisaged. We have attempted to heal the wounds, as my brother has said, and he rightfully points the TJRC, Lungu Land Commission. We still have the same problem. So number one, we need to fix the leadership, that we need to have people who are honest to the country and who know that the future of this country depends on the ability to deliver. Number two, I agree with Charles when he says that Kenya is not about Raila and Uhuru. Unfortunately, we seem to work through the two. That if you are talking about uniting the country, you are not going to go to Gatundu or to Kisumu and say, now, ignore Uhuru, ignore Raila and unite. So the unfortunate situation is that, whereas, yes, it's true that the two are not the only Kenyans you're talking about, unfortunately, they are the instrumentalization of sorts through whom we need to work and bring this, of course, together with other elected leadership and a multi-sectoral approach. Finally, Larry, I want to appeal to both sides of the divide. And I'm reminded of one anti-Nazi Lutheran theologian, Martin Niemöller, who participated heavily during the Nazi extermination. And at that time, he did not seem to take much notice of what was happening to the others because it did not matter to him.
Right.
And so he says that, look, they came for the socialists and I did not speak.
Because I was not a socialist.
Thank you. They came for the trade unionists.
I didn't speak up because I was not a trade unionist.
And for the Jews.
I didn't speak up because I was not a Jew.
Finally, they came for me.
And there was nobody left to speak up for me.
It is never safe, whichever side of the divide you are. You must always think and act futuristic and country. Thank you.
Final comments. Kate, I'll start with you.
Thank you. I must appreciate that we must come to a conclusion of the problem that you're going through as a country. And like I highlighted, and I've kept repeating myself, that the problems you're going through as Kenyans are political. And if there's anything that we would do as a country, if we must remain in political parties, because you realize political parties have contributed big time towards ethnicity and people just hating each other over politics. And in this case, what I would ask is that if there's anything we would do just to get another way of getting our leaders into offices. Because you realize Supreme Court is constituted of political parties and representatives of certain individuals. Any public servant or office holder represent interests of a certain political party. And now the country did not start to divide itself on basis of Jubilee or NASA. It started in the same constitution that you have right here.
Right.
So in this case, what I would ask is that if there's anything that we would do as a country to allow ourselves to revisit the constitution, the better. And in this case, I would ask two things. This country is not made up of President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta and Raila Amolo Odinga. The Kenyans and the poor men and women and jobless, many youths who are hovering around this country, they require a solution. The solution will not be provided for without talking about politics of the day. So in this case, I would actually beseech with the NASA and the leadership of NASA, whether they're disgruntled or not. We have a parliament which is established. The Senate is established. We have the county assemblies which are established. Can we go and look for solutions right inside the institutions which are established by the same constitution which is governing this country? And as for my parting shot, I must thank the people of Laikipia for maintaining peace and allowing us to continue doing our daily businesses without killing each other and without interfering with the rights of your neighbors. Thank you. God bless you.
And NASA's People's Assembly motion has now passed 12 county assemblies, so it appears to be gathering momentum. That must make you happy.
It's not about happiness here. It's about things running uninterrupted. And I must put it as a matter of fact that from what I've seen in the floor of the House, there is not so much hostility. And when we get to parliamentarians, when they're in Parliament, there is no hostility. Hostility only gets out. If we could emulate what we have inside Parliament, outside Parliament as leaders, because we have so many elected leaders, and we have so many other leaders in other various positions of leadership. If the leadership could come together and start thinking about Kenya, holding Kenya into prayer, we must be a prayerful nation. We must go back and look for God. Lazima tuende tutafute Mungu kwenye tulimwacha. We must go look at issues of integrity, such that if I don't qualify for a position, I don't go for it. Having said that, I want to thank the people of Rangwe. When there was a call for all of us not to go take part in the 26th elections, we didn't go. And I'm happy about it, and none of us went and participated in that election. And that is what our position is. We have no issue with anybody. But how I pray, as my last shot, that justice be our shield and defender, and that God looks upon Kenya a second time, so that we be the Kenya that the world has always known Kenya to be. Thank you very much.
Larry, let me say one thing.
Really quickly,
I think,
sir.
yeah, very quickly.
And thank the people of LSK.
Thank the people of LSK. They thank the people of Laikipia and Rangwe. So you need to thank your constituency.
I thank my constituency, of course. Nairobi branch who voted for me a year ago, and tell them elections are coming up in a few months' time. But anyway, what I wanted to say is this.
Legitimacy versus acceptability.
Acceptability. Does it happen at LSK?
That I have nothing personal about my sister. Outside we behave like that, but inside Parliament we hug each other. We are very good friends. So it was just for purposes of this program.
Okay. I wanted to say that we must end on an optimistic note. Our country has come through a trying period when many other countries in Africa and even outside Africa would not have been able to go through what we've gone through and emerge at least with the level of unity we still have. This is a country of great potential. It is a country with a constitution that is establishing a foundation for a takeoff, whether it is economic, for legal harmony, and so on. So let's try and exploit this constitution. Let us exploit our diversity, which is many times actually ought to be a source of strength, that ethnic diversity, because it brings strengths and perspectives of different people. And I think going forward, because we've gone through such a challenge and struggle, our country will emerge better and brighter from it. They say that when you have a couple that completely stop fighting, they stop talking to each other, it's a really bad sign. The fact that we are still talking, that we are still trying to get the best solution, I think is the best sign for our country. It's a sign that we are really committed still for this experiment, not really experiment, but this experience of a united country where we can have space for everyone and where everyone's grievances can be rightly arbitrated, resolved, and we move on as one.
All right. Maybe if this whole law thing doesn't work out, you should become a couple of counselor. Have you noticed how many relationship examples is given today? Thank you so much for coming out today. Let me read some comments real quick before we go. Onyango Wasuna says, Larry, the country needs healing. If only the person speaking for Jubilee was able to have some empathy. And yes, this can be a platform to kickstart dialogue. She needs to be humble and to understand dialogue is key. Hate for Raila will not win any prize. I guess that was meant that they think that you hate Raila.
I didn't hate Raila. I have nothing personal against Raila Odinga.
Okay.
These are matters of national interest.
E.F. Lewis says, Kenyan politicians should stop this over-dependence on prayers. It's not a magical solution to every problem. If it fails to rain, let's pray. If the country is divided, let's pray. If public funds are looted, let's pray. I guess that's against.
I have no regrets about prayers. It has always worked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jay Willie. Kenya is suffering from actions of politically greedy leaders and will suffer till the next generation. Dialogue won't help us now, not after elections. Impossible. Wow. And finally, Ifra Abdi says, let's be patriotic. Death of any Kenyan is a sorrow. We must feel it, regardless of political, religious, tribe, or economic stability. Let's be careful and think of how to heal the wounds in the hearts for better future, but being proud will not help. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much, Cate Warugu, Dr. Lilian, Gogo, Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana, and Charles Kanjama. Hopefully we have time in the new year to bring all of you back to talk about whatever issues will come up. It is now Thursday, so good morning.
Thank you for hosting
Mike, thank you for reminding me. It has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure having, I think all of you have been on our show more than once this year. We appreciate your insight. All this past few months have been extraordinary, but you are useful to come on and help us unpack through all the different issues we're discussing. That will be our last live show on Sidebar this year. Next week, we are still on the air at 10 p.m. We will be kind of trying to put together all of our best shows through this year. We had such a year. We had a show in Naivasha at the Governors Conference, and all the governors we had on the show lost, except one, Jackson Mandago. Yes, this happened. It's not the Sidebar cast, I promise you. Don't worry, you'll come back. You'll get re-elected. We had so many interesting people come on the show. We had 2 presidential candidates, both of whom lost as well. I think it is.
Only one won. It can never be 2 lost.
No. The 2 presidential candidates we had on the show both lost, so I don't know. But we've had so many interesting people over the year, and since March 1st when we went on the air until right now, we're trying to, we'll recap our best conversations through the year next week, and then we'll see you next year at the top of maybe the 2nd week of January with new live shows. My name is Madowo. On behalf of the team, thank you for watching. Good morning.